There is a road in southwest Missouri that almost nobody drives anymore. It leaves Springfield heading west on a two-lane that locals still call Old Highway 66, winds through rolling Ozark Plateau terrain, past farms and cedars and limestone bluffs, and passes through a dozen communities that were once alive with traffic, neon signs, roadside diners, motor courts, gas stations, and all the particular commerce of mid-century America moving through on a summer afternoon. Most of those communities are gone now, not demolished, just emptied. The buildings are still there in many cases, standing in fields or at crossroads where the old road intersects with county routes that lead nowhere in particular. Some of them are still structurally sound, their windows dark, their parking lots cracked, and grass invaded, their signs faded to the point where you can only guess at what they once advertised. Some are ruins, some are nothing at all, a patch of disturbed ground, a cemetery, a foundation outline in the grass. The highway that created them was decommissioned in 1985. The interstate that replaced it runs a few miles south, a straight flat ribbon of asphalt designed to move freight and passengers as efficiently as possible, with no interest whatsoever in the places it passes through. The towns along Old Highway 66 never recovered from that rerouting. In most cases, they stopped recovering the day the bypass opened. This is the story of what Route 66 built in the Missouri Ozarks and what Interstate 44 quietly erased. The highway was officially named on April 30th, 1926, in a hotel room in Springfield, Missouri. A telegram went out to Washington, D.C. proposing U.S. Route 66. That moment, already covered in this channel's Springfield video, matters here because it explains what happened next. The highway that was named from Springfield ran both directions from that city. To the east, it climbed through the Ozarks toward St. Louis. To the west, it rolled off the plateau edge through the gentle hills between Springfield and Carthage, through a stretch of country that had been scraping by on subsistence farming and a little timber since white settlers arrived in the 1830s. For those towns, Route 66 was a rescue. The communities between Springfield and Carthage had already been dealt one hard blow by the railroad. When the Frisco line was built through southwest Missouri in the 1870s, it took the route that was easiest to grade and cheapest to build, which meant it bypassed most of the small agricultural communities that had grown up along the old stagecoach roads. Without the railroad, those towns had no way to move their goods to market efficiently. Some held on through sheer stubbornness, some quietly died. The arrival of the automobile seemed like it might change things, but early auto roads were dirt and gravel nightmares, rutted, muddy in spring, dusty in summer, essentially impassable in winter. The Ozark Trail Association, formed in 1913, began pushing for better roads through the region specifically to connect these isolated communities to the national economy. Route 66 in 1926 was the answer to that push. A paved, numbered, nationally promoted highway passing directly through the western Ozark Plateau from Springfield to Joplin meant that overnight, a dozen communities that had been economically stranded for half a century had a main street. Tourists stopped for gas. Families stopped for meals. Traveling salesmen stopped for the night. The Depression hit hard, but Route 66 traffic, driven in part by Dust Bowl migration moving westward, kept these small towns alive when almost nothing else would have. John Steinbeck called it the Mother Road. In the Ozark communities it passed through, it was more than a metaphor. It was the only economic lifeline most of them had. 10 miles west of Springfield, on Old Route 66, the road comes to a crossroads in the grass where the town of Plano, Missouri once stood. Plano was never much more than a crossroads, a general store built in 1902, a gas station, a mortuary and casket factory in a wooden building that no longer exists. What the town had was location. It sat at the junction of the Old Wire Road, the telegraph line corridor that had run from St. Louis to Fort Smith, Arkansas, since before the Civil War. That same corridor carried Route 66, which meant that for 30 years, every car heading west from Springfield passed through Plano's front yard. When Interstate 44 replaced Route 66, Plano died. The general store building still stands, crumbling at its northeast corner. A former Tidal gas station on the southeast corner is now a private home. That's Plano. 2 buildings and a memory. 4 miles further west is Halltown. It has more left and a more complicated story. Halltown was substantial enough by the Route 66 era to be called the antique capital of the world. That designation, however informal, reflected a real economy. The town had grocery stores, a gas station, a blacksmith shop, and a collection of antique dealers that drew buyers from across the region. The anchor building was the Whitehall Mercantile, built in 1900 with an enormous false front that gave it the look of something much larger than it was. A piece of architectural ambition on a dirt road that Route 66 eventually made into a main street. After the bypass, most of Halltown's businesses closed and were boarded up. The Whitehall Mercantile building still stands on the northeast corner of the highway intersection, its false front still visible, its interior long empty. Walking past it now, you can see the proportions of the old town, the scale at which it was built, the distance between the buildings, the layout of a commercial district that expected traffic, and then stopped getting it. Paris Springs was different from the beginning. People came here before Route 66 for the mineral springs. In the 1850s, the healing waters drew visitors and supported hotels, mills, and the ordinary commerce of a spa town. The community that grew up was modest, but real. When Route 66 came through in 1926, Paris Springs had a problem. The highway missed the town by half a mile. The townspeople solved this the way small towns have always solved it. They moved. The new settlement closer to the highway was called Paris Springs Junction, and it added a Sinclair gas station with a soda fountain and a sandwich shop. The owner named it Gay Parita after his wife. Gay Parita became one of those specific Route 66 stops the travelers remembered, the kind of place where you would pull off, get your gas pumped by an attendant who checked your oil and cleaned your windshield, drink a soda at a counter, and get back on the road 20 minutes later, feeling like the country had looked after you. That experience, the whole infrastructure of personal service and roadside hospitality that Route 66 created, is what Interstate 44 made structurally impossible. The interstate's geometry does not permit it. You cannot slow down. You cannot pull off to a single pump and a soda fountain. You exit, refuel at a franchise, and merge back in. The transaction is completed in the minimum possible time. The relationship between road and town that Route 66 represented was a specific historical moment, and it ended. The original Gay Parita station decayed and eventually fell. A restoration project in the early 2000s rebuilt it as a replica on the original site. Gary Turner, a local Route 66 enthusiast, ran it as a free stop for travelers. No gas for sale, just a preserved piece of what the road used to mean. Turner died in 2014. The replica station is still there. It still draws travelers who know what they are looking for. Subscribe before you go further. Hit the button and the bell. This is the kind of story this channel was built for. Spencer, Missouri was born twice and died twice on the same road. In the 1800s, Spencer had a store and a post office and the beginnings of a small community. When the store closed around the turn of the century, the town essentially stopped. Then 1926 arrived, and Route 66 ran directly through Spencer's front yard. The town revived, a gas station, a diner, cabins for travelers, traffic every day for 30 years. Then the bypass came. Spencer went quiet again. The buildings did not fall, they just stopped being used. The current owners have preserved the site carefully enough that visitors can stop and photograph what remains. Standing there today, you can see both versions of Spencer at once. The Route 66 infrastructure is still visible in the shape of the buildings and the layout of the old road, and the silence of a place that has been bypassed twice and survived both times by simply still being there. Devil's Elbow is the most dramatic of the Route 66 ghost communities in the Ozarks, and it earned its name the hard way. The Big Piney River cuts a sharp U-shaped bend through the Ozark limestone here, a bend so acute that when the old-growth timber was being floated downstream in the 1870s, the logs jammed at the curve repeatedly, earning it the name a devil of an elbow. The settlement that grew up here was a lumberjack camp first, isolated from the railroads and served only by rough wagon tracks through the hills. In 1923, the county built a steel truss bridge spanning 588 feet over the Big Piney at the elbow. That bridge made the location accessible and put it on the route of what would become Route 66 3 years later. A resort and camp opened. The Munger Moss Sandwich Shop opened on the north side of the bridge. The same owners who would later move to Lebanon and open the still operating Munger Moss Motel when Devil's Elbow was bypassed. A native rock cafe opened on the south side. Rental cabins went up along the river. During World War II, the proximity to Fort Leonard Wood, 5 miles west, brought a surge of construction and a temporary population boom. It didn't last. The 4-lane bypass opened in late 1945 and rerouted the main traffic flow north of the community. Devil's Elbow never recovered that traffic. What it had was the bridge and the river, and those were enough to keep it from disappearing entirely. The 1923 bridge is still there. It is one of only 2 surviving Route 66 bridges with a dog-leg curve, a bend built into the bridge itself to follow the old road's alignment. It was deteriorating severely by the 2000s, its concrete piers cracking, its structural steel rusting. Pulaski County took responsibility for it after Route 66 was decommissioned, applied for federal preservation grants, and in 2013 completed a $1.3 million rehabilitation. The bridge is now open to traffic. The Elbow Inn, a roadhouse dating from 1929, still operates. Sheldon's Market, opened in 1954 and still running as both a grocery and post office, is one of the longest continuously operating businesses on any Route 66 ghost town stretch in Missouri. Devil's Elbow got hit by catastrophic flooding in 2017. 8 feet of water went through some of the historic buildings. The Elbow Inn was waterlogged. McCoy's store, one of the oldest structures in the community, was taken down afterward as a hazard. The residents stayed. They rebuilt what they could. They are still there in a community that was bypassed 70 years ago and has refused to fully disappear. Avilla, 12 miles west of Springfield, has its own particular trajectory and a Confederate ghost story that the town has been carrying for 160 years. Avilla was on the stagecoach line before the railroad existed. When the railroad bypassed it in the 1870s, the town stagnated for 50 years. Route 66 revived it. For 30 years, the town had gas stations, diners, cabins, and all the particular commerce of a highway stop. Then Interstate 44 took the traffic south, and Avilla contracted to a post office, a bar and restaurant, an old Odd Fellows Lodge building, and a former service station that has not sold gas since sometime in the mid-20th century. The ghost is Rotten Johnny Reb, a Confederate bushwhacker from the Civil War era whose skull, according to local legend, was hung from a tree as a warning, and whose headless spirit has been wandering the area ever since, looking for what he lost. The death tree's location died with the last people who remembered it. The skull, if it ever existed, has not been found. Route 66 travelers in the 1940s and 1950s heard the story at the gas station counter. The people who stop now hear it at the bar. The stretch from Springfield to Carthage along Old Missouri 266 passes through 11 communities in about 60 miles. By 1965, all of them had been bypassed. The towns that survived did so by finding a reason to exist beyond highway traffic. A small residential population, a local institution, a gas station serving the county roads. The towns that had no other reason evaporated. What remains on that old stretch of road is not nothing. It is a landscape of a specific moment in American history. The moment when the automobile was new enough to be transformative, but slow enough to require stopping. when the road was an experience rather than a transit mechanism, when the country between cities was something you passed through and engaged with rather than something you flew over at 70 miles an hour behind sealed windows. The interstate made American travel more efficient and more anonymous in the same motion. You get where you're going faster. You know nothing about the country between. The towns that depended on you stopping had no ability to make you stop, and most of them could not survive that change. What Route 66 offered was not just a road, it was a relationship between the traveler and the land they were passing through. The traveler needed gas, food, a bed, human contact. The towns provided it. That dependency ran both directions, and when the interstate severed it, both sides lost something. The traveler lost the country lost the traveler. The old road is still drivable. It still has historic designation signs along it. The communities that remain are quiet in ways that feel less like abandonment and more like aftermath, places where something happened that has not quite finished happening yet. The buildings are still there. The cemeteries are still tended. The people who stayed are still there, older now, watching the occasional Route 66 enthusiast slow down to photograph the false front of a mercantile building or the ruins of a stone gas station, and then drive on. If you have driven it, or if you grew up near it, drop a comment. The best Route 66 stories always come from the people who actually stopped. Subscribe if you have not. Hit the bell. There is more of this coming.